All right, we're trying something new here. This is a conversation with Coach Fred Fusaro, and I'm Chris Vaccaro, the president of the Sachem Alumni Association. I've been doing stories, historical gathering of facts, covering this community for the better part of 20 years. And, in the last month or two, I said, I'd like to have an audio and a video archive that we can call our oral history project that can live on for a long time. And there's tons of things that you could Google about Sachem history. There's tons of things that I've put on YouTube and that are on different sites that I've run. But I'd like a very consistent video approach here to hear from people like Fred Fusaro, from people like Tom Sabatel and Risa Zander. We'll get into the educational folks. We'll get into the music folks. I want everyone to understand the specialness of this community and how it was built and how we feel about it all these years later, why we're so proud to be from Sachem. So first, I had to have Coach Fusaro as my initial inaugural guest in this project. You are the first person I've ever interviewed when I was 15 years old at Sachem. And all these years later, we have a great relationship. I know you've always respected the work I've done to chronicle the history of not only Sachem football, but the entire community and the athletic program. So thanks for joining me. I'm excited to talk to you about your life and your career and everything that Sachem means to you.
Pleasure to be here, Chris. You do great work. I've always told you that.
Yeah. And people going back to when you were teaching and coaching, have a perspective on you as a, rough, old school, just, by the book type of coach. Obviously, as you've gotten older, people see you as a very approachable gentleman that, is kind and very grateful for everything that you experienced. When you were growing up, how did you build that persona as a tough guy, as somebody that didn't take no for an answer, as somebody that just was, for lack of a better term, old school? Where do your personality traits come from, and how did that impact you as a coach?
Well, I grew up in an Italian-American family, and my father was a disciplinarian, as most Italian fathers were during that era. So that contributed to my persona. My older brother, who was 6 years older than me, bordered on child abuse, I guess you would call it. He toughened me up, and he had a great deal to do with my personality as I was growing up. As a kid, because he was 6 years older than me, we would go in the backyard or in the driveway, and I was a catcher on the little league team, and he would fire baseballs at me. He would be hitting me in the shoulders, hit me in the legs. I mean, he toughened me up, really. My older brother did. A funny story is, I guess I was about 10 or 11. We had a newspaper boy that was delivering newspapers to our house. And one day I started ragging him. I started getting on his case, And he tells me, "You better shut up or I'm going to kick your butt." So I persisted. And he ended up kicking my butt. And my brother was in the house. So he had me on the ground. He was older than me, the kid, the newspaper boy. And he had me on the ground. He was sitting on my chest. And my brother came out of the house, grabbed him, did a tune on him. Kid, got away, ran away. He says, "Your brother is a wise guy." He tells my older brother. So the kid leaves. My brother grabs me and he goes, "Oh, you want to be a wise guy? If you want to be a wise guy, you better be able to protect yourself." And he smacks me. That's kind of like the way we grew up. I love my brother, but he was tough on me. And I think that had a great deal to do with me having that type of personality.
And so you grew up in Huntington. Everyone associates you with Sachem, and even in the later years, John Glenn. But Huntington has a rich historic sporting history, even a regular cultural history. It's still a beautiful area to this day. Talk about growing up there. What did your parents do for a living? What was your household like outside of course, the old school Italian-American lifestyle that you lived? And, kind of paint a picture for the folks that don't know what it was like to grow up on Long Island in the late 1950s, early 60s?
Well, I grew up in Huntington Station, which was largely an Italian, Irish, Jewish community. And my mom and dad were partners in a restaurant with my aunt and uncle in Huntington Station. So I grew up working in a restaurant for a good number of years until they sold it. I went to I went to St. Hugh's Elementary School for 8 years. Then I went to Toez Junior High School. My folks wanted me to go to Catholic high school, but I didn't want to go. They wanted me to go to St. Dominic's in Oyster Bay. And they didn't have football, so I didn't want to go there. So like August, going into my freshman year, I told my father that I didn't want to go to St. Dominic's. I wanted to go to Huntington because I wanted to play football. And he said, well, you're not going to play football even if you go to Huntington High School. And my brother interceded for me. Again, the old school Italian way was, you work, sports were not that irrelevant. Football was definitely out of the picture. He wouldn't let my brother play football. My brother played basketball and baseball at Huntington High School. So my brother interceded. Make a long story short, I ended up going to Huntington High School, and I played JV football. At that time, it was very competitive. You had to make the teams. There was no such thing as coming out and you're on a team. You had to make the team. And I was at practice one day prior to the cuts, and we had a kid on our team named Hartwell Moore. He was probably one of the biggest kids in high school. And our JV coach was Coach Borowitz. And he was doing his drill, a one-on-one drill. And he was pitting one lineman against another lineman. So at that time, I was probably 5'7", 165 pounds. And Hartwell was probably 6'3", 245. And I was intentionally getting in the line so I could go against him. And he was whipping my butt. He was a big kid. But I continued to do it. And as a result of that type of intestinal fortitude, I'll call it, I made the team. I ended up starting as an offensive guard and a nose tackle on JV team. Then the following year, I was on a varsity. Funny story, one of my best friends and one of our coaches at Sachem was Steve Hackett. We played football together at Huntington. And Steve was an excellent athlete, better athlete than I was. And my junior year, we had a great team. I mean, we were loaded. And at that time, Port Jeff was one of the biggest schools in Suffolk County. That's before they split up into Compsawag, Mount Sinai. They were really good. Make a long story short, they beat us for the championship my junior year. I didn't get a lot of playing time as a junior. Steve was a linebacker. He got a lot of playing time. Then we went to our senior year and we had a mediocre season. And that's pretty much how it went when I was in high school. I played football and baseball at Huntington, and I probably should have wrestled. I loved wrestling. After football season, I just didn't have the wherewithal to go out for wrestling. I should have, though, because I loved wrestling, and a lot of my cousins wrestled. So that was the one regret I had in high school. That, in the fact that I didn't do a lot of studying.
And did you get that bug for football? Did you become addicted to it? Did you see it as something you'd be spending the next 40, 50 years of your life involved with, even at that point?
Well, it's funny. My high school coach, who just passed away a few years ago, he was in upper 90s. His name was Al Donofrio. And
another Italian.
Pardon me?
Another Italian, of course.
Yes. He was just a great guy. And I emulated him. he was like a mentor to me, but I emulated him. And I said to myself, that's what I want to do. That's what I would like to do. He taught phys ed. He was the football coach, and he was a great guy. And aside from that, one of my brother's best friends played at Huntington High School, Pete Sanzavero. He ended up going on to coach. He went to Ithaca College, and he was kind of like I idolized both those guys, and that really got me in the path to this is what I want to do. I want to be a coach.
So you go to Ithaca, you play college
Well,
football.
initially I didn't. I didn't get into Ithaca. I ended up going to Southern Illinois University they were on a quarter system. And I went there for 3 quarters. I really enjoyed it, but I couldn't play football. They were a Division I team. The year I was there, they had 3 guys sign professional contracts. So there was no way, size-wise, that I could play there. But I always wanted to go to Ithaca anyway. So I had applied to Ithaca. I got accepted to Ithaca. And the last quarter of that year, I had sent my transcripts to Ithaca. And I asked them, these are the classes that I'm taking for the 4th quarter. How many of those credits are you going to accept? Well, out of 16, they were going to take like 4. I said, it's foolish for me to stay here. So I left Southern Illinois. I came home. My uncle got me a job on a union construction job. And I worked construction pretty much my entire college career. So I ended up transferring to Ithaca. Again, it was a very competitive situation. My first year there, I had redshirted, and we were cannon fodder for the varsity for the entire year. Again, it all contributes to, how you grow up, the experiences you have, and it kind of like forms your personality. And all of that contributed to me having this demeanor, I guess you would call it, about being a tough guy. I wasn't really a tough guy. I really wasn't. I held kids accountable. I was a disciplinarian. I was old school. Yeah, I was old school.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure some people would disagree that you weren't a tough guy. There's certain ones, but honestly, of the hundreds of people, probably even thousands at this point that I've interacted with, the large majority of them appreciated the accountability, and it made them into the men and coaches that they became later on. And we'll talk about some of those guys, but that type of persona translated to obviously victories, but teamwork, peer-to-peer accountability, leadership. And, just in the last couple of weeks, I'm having conversations with guys who went into the Navy SEALs because they were positively impacted by Sachem football. I mean, that's the highest level of strategic thought, arguably, in our military, in the world's military. And you had a part in that, which is fantastic, So, and those are 2 very specific examples, and I can go on about others. And I'm going to be posting stories about those individuals very soon. So you go on to college, you play in college, but you obviously know at this point you want to be a coach, and you get a really cool opportunity to coach at Hofstra and St. Lawrence. And so if you look at the building blocks of your coaching life, having that college experience as a grad assistant, as an assistant coach, learning from guys like Howdy Myers and some other big names, I'd say that had to be greatly impactful for you of how you viewed the game, and then things that you probably took later on that you used for your whole career.
Oh, no question about it. When I graduated from Ithaca, I got a graduate assistantship at St. Lawrence University, and the head coach was Bobby Ford. And Bobby Ford was an outstanding man and an outstanding coach. He ended up going on to the University of Albany. He started the football program there, and he was a tremendous influence on my life. All right, he was a good man. I learned a lot of football. I learned a lot of organization about football from Bobby. Then I got the job at Hofstra. I was the head freshman coach my first 2 years. I was coaching football, freshman football, and freshman wrestling. And again, I worked with some outstanding coaches that went on. John Jackson ended up leaving Hofstra, going on to Dartmouth. Then he went to the University of Illinois. Then he was the running back coach at USC. That was the caliber of coach we had on our staff. So, I used to keep my mouth shut and my ears wide, my eyes wide open and my ears open, because those guys had a wealth of knowledge. So I had the good fortune of working with really good people, and I learned a lot. Howdy Myers was probably one of the most knowledgeable guys of any football coaches I ever met. You could put Howdy on a board and say, Howdy, talk about single leg football, and he would give you a playbook on single leg football. That didn't make any difference what the topic was. He was really, really a bright guy. So my formative years, 2 years I was the head freshman coach. Then 2 years I was the offensive line coach. And certain things were happening within Hofstra at the time. All right. There was a period where they wanted to elevate the football program, play better competition. When I first got there, the scholarships were need-based scholarships, and we were in the Atlantic Conference with Delaware, Gettysburg, Lafayette, schools like that. Then they wanted to play tougher competition, so they went away from need-based scholarships, and we started to upgrade the schedule. And then it was a move within the school after 2 years that they're spending too much money. They pulled back on the scholarship. It became a bad situation. So that's when I started looking for a high school job. Actually, the reason that I got the job at Sachem, Joe Campo was the head football coach and head wrestling coach at Brentwood High School. That's when Brentwood was the top dog. They won pretty much every championship. Maybe not in swimming. That was one of the few that they didn't. But everything else, football, wrestling, basketball, track and field, baseball, they were good in everything. So anyway, when I was coaching at Hofstra, I met Joe, and I wouldn't say we became good friends, but I used to talk to him quite a bit. And one time when he was over, he had brought one of his kids from Brentwood over, a wrestler, for a clinic. And I told him that I was looking for a high school job. So he told me the Sachem job is going to open up. He said, it's going to be a real good job, and I would recommend you applying, which I did. And I asked him if I could use his name as a reference. And at that time, Joe was like renowned. So I ended up getting the job largely because Joe recommended it to me. And then I started my career at Sachem and never looked back.
So, yeah, and in 1970, 1971, Sachem was not yet what it would become. You were one of the folks, obviously, on the athletic side that helped change the entire culture of the school community. I mean, I have a personal thesis. I call it, community thesis, that our culture and spirit has developed from the athletic side. And that's not to say we weren't an amazing academic institution as well, but culture, spirit, and pride are built on victory. You win on the back pages. You win on Friday night. You win when there's 500 students at a pep rally going crazy because of their school colors. You win because of consistent amount of victory over a long period of time that creates a certain persona in our students. When everyone's winning, the entire building is winning, the entire community is winning. But in 1970, 71, it wasn't like that. But did you feel like it was close, or when you started, it was still wow, this is a big project. We got to get this football program where you want it to be. And you're not even thinking about the larger, greater good. You're just focusing on getting those 40, 50 guys in the same marching order. What was the mentality like? What was the community like? What was the school district administration like? Paint that picture for people that have no idea before it became this, university-like feel.
Well, when I first went to Sachem, they had just fired the head football coach for reasons that I don't want to get into, but he was still teaching at the high school. And it was a big controversy over the firing of the coach. So my first week there, the first thing I did is I walked up to, his name was Brian. I walked up to Brian and I said, I introduced myself and I said, look, I don't really know what went on here. I'm just trying to coach these kids and help build a program. And I hope you won't do anything to jeopardize that. And he was really good. He really was. I can honestly say that he didn't do anything to hurt what we were trying to do. Well, my first year, we were in League Two. And I think we were 4-4 or 5-3 my first year. It was a tough year because a lot of the kids that were loyal to the head coach, the previous head coach, didn't come out to play. So some real good players that would have contributed to us being more successful, they were not going out for the team. So it took me a little time to realize what the deficiencies were in the program. The biggest problem was at that time we had all of our seventh graders in one junior high school, all of our eighth graders in another junior high school, and all of our ninth graders at Samoset. Now, from an educational point of view, I don't know how good that was, but I know from an athletic point of view, it definitely wasn't helping us because the attrition rate, seventh graders at that time were not playing football. So the eighth graders would have 150 guys come out for the team. That got whittled down. They went to the ninth grade, and out of the 150, it got whittled down again. They had one freshman team, one ninth grade team. Now, our ninth graders would go up against, say, Brentwood at that time. Brentwood had 4 junior high schools. All of our freshmen would play a quarter of the Brentwood kids, and we would beat the crap out of them. All right. And that went on for pretty much the entire schedule. All of our ninth graders on one team and playing against a third or a quarter of the teams in our league, because at that time we had gone up to League One. So all the big schools were in League One. Well, it didn't take me too long to realize that that was not going to work. So I was really on a mission to try to get our schools integrated into 7, 8, 9. And I did a lot of politicking. It was not an easy thing. Finally, let me see. Going back to 71, we were in League 2. 72, we were in League 1. And it was ugly. It really was ugly. 71, 72, 73. 74, we started to get better. 75, we were vying for the championship. 76 is when they changed the format. We had 7, 8, 9 in 3 buildings. And at that time, I realized that if we stay in this device, we're going to be really good. Well, 76, we were better. 77 was the first team that was the byproduct of the 3 junior high school setup. Yeah. And 77, we won a championship. 78, we won a championship. 79, we won a championship. And that was largely because, A, we had the 3 integrated junior high schools. B, I had great coaches. I mean, outstanding coaches. And God knows we had super, super kids. And the competition to make the team was unbelievable. Unbelievable. We used to have to make cuts. So, there was a criteria that I had. The kids had to do certain things. If they were playing another sport, that was fine. I encouraged that. But if they weren't playing another sport, they had to be in a weight room working out. And as a result of that, we got real good. And I always had the philosophy of, I don't think any athletic program can be good if only one team, one sport is doing well and the rest of them aren't. There are some coaches that don't care about that. That was always a focal point for me, because at Huntington High School, we were good in everything. All of our sports did well. And I felt that was why Huntington High School, you had that pride about your school. And I wanted to instill that at Sachem when I got there. So as a result of us being successful, a lot of the other sports started to win. And before you know it, we were good in everything. And coaches were working hard. It wasn't just an in-season thing. You had to do things out of the season. You had to cultivate the talent. And as a result of the hard work and the good coaches and great kids, we ended up being successful.
It really did snowball. I've talked to the Frank Schmidts of the world, the Jack Mahoneys, the Rick Mercurios, and I can go on and on. And the vibe from that late 70s carried on for another 20 plus years.
Yeah.
It really, and you could boil it down to certain players or certain games, but that's actually almost impossible because there's just so much good. And you can go into girls basketball and baseball and swimming and gymnastics. I mean, every single sport, you look at the banners, you look at the history and the records. It's almost, when I explain it to people who don't understand Sachem or don't understand the size of it today, and I do it pretty often, when I explain to them, we hardly lost anything. If we didn't win a county championship, it was an unsuccessful year in any sport. And the amount of All-Americans, Division I athletes, obviously the Jeff Rulands, Jumbo Elliott's, Neil Heaton's story of that era is almost unprecedented from any school to have guys at that level on all 3 of those sports. But it was a collective feeling of pride. That obviously we call it San Zigal, Sachem is without equal, or as it's been emblazoned on the weight room wall, it is a tradition of excellence. And that is not a generic term here, because when you're living it, when you guys were building it, it really was becoming a tradition, and everyone was excellent. And I imagine, you had your struggles with administration, and that happens to any coach, but you had Tom Sabatel, who really believed in the district. He was a product of it. He graduated from Sachem. He became a coach and then the athletic director. That had to help you guys, you guys as in the entire athletic program, that had to help stabilize and build for the future. He must have been a really powerful visionary to work with at the time.
Oh, he was unbelievable. Actually, Tom and I go back a long way, because my sophomore year at Ithaca, Tommy was a senior. So I knew Tommy from then. Then when I got the job at Sachem, he was at Samoset. He was coaching basketball. Then he became assistant AD. Then he became the AD. And he knew what it took to win. And he was a tremendous organizational guy. He knew exactly what we needed. I can't say enough good things about Tommy, because without him, I don't know if we would have been as successful as we were in everything. He was a great administrator.
And, when it comes to your players, many of whom went on to coach football and other sports, but you talk about guys like Mark Wojciechowski and Dave Caputo and Dave Shanahan, and forgive me for the hundreds of others that I can't mention all in one shot, but these type of guys embody what it means to be a Sachem kid, somebody who believes in the culture, who believes in the name on the front of the jersey, and who wants to be a part of the future and the impact that they're able to make now, long after you've retired. They're continuing on in many of them in Sachem, but many of them, like a Dave Shanahan, in John Glenn, still instilling the values of Sachem in other places. What does that mean for you to have your disciples, so to speak, the people who really bought into everything that you preached, and to live it? And your coaching tree is hundreds of people deep. And you're even a coaching grandfather at this point. There are coaches that have become coaches from other, levels and layers.
Right. There was a time during my career where almost every single coach from the junior high school level to the varsity level was a former Sachem player. All right. And that really, I was really proud of that. That was something that I was very proud of. I had great kids. I tell people all the time that I was blessed. I really was blessed, because the people that I had coaching for me, the former players, they all bought in. They knew what we wanted to do, and they helped instill the pride in Sachem that we had. No question about it. I always felt that one of my primary jobs as a high school coach was to enable kids to go on and better themselves. And I worked very hard getting our kids placed in college. And as a result of that, a lot of them went into education and came back and coached for us. I can't say enough good things about the players that I had. We had such dedicated kids, tough, hard-nosed, gritty kids. That's why we were successful.
And it's a blue collar community. It's middle class. It's middle of the road. It's hardworking parents, people working hard to put food on the table. And obviously that was instilled in the values that your student athletes had. And we're wrapping up in a few minutes, so we're not going to get into individual games. And I've asked you over the years, what's the best team? I don't even need to ask that. The best team is all the teams, because they all played a part in who we are today. It's the same fabric and culture that Dave Caputo is trying to build, at North, and that many coaches have tried to build at East as well. And it's great. 77 was amazing. 78 was amazing. It's great to beat Boomer Esiason, but it was also great to win in 95. And it was great to win in 2013, because it's just good to win. And it's good to win when you're doing it for the sake of something bigger than yourself, which is the community and the culture and the history.
I'll tell you what, Chris, I loved being at Sachem. I loved the people. I loved the kids. It was best time of my life, no question about it. I feel a loyalty to Sachem that I can't even describe it. I'm so proud of things that we did, and that I was part of helping make that school what it is.
Well, I think that's the perfect way to close. And, on behalf of thousands of student athletes that you've coached and taught, on behalf of our evolving landscape here, which I'm trying to keep alive and well, and make sure that people don't forget who we are as we continue to find that same feeling again one day. I appreciate everything you've done for our community, and even appreciate that first interview I ever had with you 20 years ago in the phys ed coach's office, where you compared me to Rich Cimini, another Italian-American sports writer from Sachem who I've idolized and looked up to. So thanks for who you are. Thanks for everything you've done. Thanks for sharing this time with me.
Hey, Chris, I'm going to tell you, I don't know where you find the time to do all the things that you do. I swear. I mean, you're doing a great job. There is no school district on Long Island that has a guy like you. Nobody. You have just had a tremendous impact on Sachem, and I congratulate you.
Well, I appreciate that. Sachem is a part of who I am, and my way of giving back is to do things like this, to make sure that there's somebody else like me down the line that could take the ball and run with it also, and carry this on, whether it's the Hall of Fame, the Hall of Honor, the Alumni Association, conversations like this, the guest speaker at graduation. I just want kids to know how special of a community this really is, and that if you know it when you're here, it'll have an even bigger impact than when you leave. And
Definitely.
maybe some of those people, some of those kids can give back and do the same thing. Maybe some of those teachers can realize, hey, this is a really special place. Let's give more than we take and make sure that we keep it alive and well. So yeah, let's keep on doing it. And again, thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you, Chris.
All right.
All right.